Hey everyone, and welcome to Advantage Point, the series where we unpack how smarter systems and sharper thinking create strategic advantage. This season, we're asking one of the hottest questions in tech and marketing right now: AI in SaaS. What's hype and what's real? Now, here are a few numbers to help frame what we're going to be talking about today. According to McKinsey, 65% of SaaS leaders say that they're under pressure to show AI value, but fewer than 20% feel confident that they're measuring it well. HubSpot also reports that 70% of marketers have already added generative AI to their daily work, but then again, half admit that they don't yet have clear guardrails. And Forrester forecast that by 2026, nearly 40% of SaaS integration and workflow tasks will be automated by AI-driven tools. So, the gap between promise and practice is quite wide. And today we're asking, how do real operators cut through the hype? What's actually working and where the cracks still show? Now, joining me is Deanne Moura, CEO of Zen Change Marketing, a firm that's helped tons of businesses from attorneys to healthcare providers scale their digital marketing, and where AI is already part of her daily toolkit. She's also the host of Entrepreneur with Deanne Moura, a podcast that's closing in on 100 episodes of candid takes from founders. Deanne, welcome to Advantage Point.
Thank you so much.
Excellent stuff. Now, before we dive in, what first drew you into applying AI in your own practice?
Market necessity.
Good answer and the right answer.
Can we
Fair enough.
not?
Yeah.
DNA, how could we not? I mean, look, I started my career in corporate America. So I've had the good fortune of having a couple of decades under my belt working with businesses at scale. I've worked with 30 of the Fortune 500. I've always been very close to tech. I'm not a techie, so I certainly, I don't think I could code something to save my life, but I've always worked in technology and with applying technology to solve business problems. So I'm very comfortable in that space. And so, when and I've been around for a while, so I was experienced the impact of the internet and how the initial, I think, fear that then turned into excitement as to all the opportunities that it could create. So to me, AI is really that next wave. And, it's really a great opportunity. We're still relatively early, although I would say that the path is accelerating way faster than it did with the internet age. And so as entrepreneurs, I think everyone really has to jump on this bandwagon yesterday, because if you're not, your competitors already are and you're losing ground. So I think when I started to kind of play around with AI, and like many people, it was ChatGPT was kind of the first experience, and I thought, oh, this is really interesting. And then I started really just digging and listening to all the thought leaders that I could and speaking to everyone that I could. And I had the good fortune of interviewing some very talented, interesting thought leaders on my podcast as well. And so the more that I got into the conversations and the more that I was seeing the opportunities, I thought this is an absolute game changer. So I'm super excited to work with businesses to apply it to help them to grow now.
Excellent stuff. And again, like I always say, Diane has no idea. Deanne, sorry. Deanne has no idea of the questions I'm going to be asking her. So she's completely on the hot seat, but I'm pretty sure her experience will allow her to navigate seamlessly. So one thing about me is I like stats, and I like that to kind of be the foundation of the discussions that we're going to have. So be prepared to have a lot of stats thrown at you, although I imagine you already know half of them already. Okay, so here we go. So the first question then. Gartner says that 83% of executives worry that AI pilots will stall because expectations outpace delivery. So from your skilled vantage point, Deanne, working with small and mid-sized businesses in regulated sectors, why does AI, in your opinion, still feel so polarizing in 2025? I mean, where does it genuinely help, and where does it risk being more noise than signal?
It's kind of interesting because I think there's this balance between what corporate America is doing with AI and what small business is doing with AI. And like implementing any technology, if to do it within a corporate environment, you obviously have a lot of hurdles. You have to, get the right levels of approval, and you have to integrate it with other, very established systems. If you're in an SMB world, the owner, the executive makes a decision and you just go. So I think there's from the ability to execute from that perspective, I think there's fewer barriers. Now, on the flip side, if you're in a large enterprise setting, you have more resources at your disposal. So I think that there's a challenge right now, right, where I think small businesses are able to adapt these technologies and they're able to scale more quickly, and larger enterprises are, a little, I won't say fatter, but a little they have more, more that more in their organization. And so they have to go through a whole change management process. We only have, I think, a rather narrow window right now as SMBs, because, as soon as our corporate competitors really embrace this technology, they're going to be able to do things because of their deep pockets that are very difficult for an SMB, and they'll be able to gobble up share. I believe that currently there's more barriers for them to do so. So I think, like, some of when Gartner researches, typically they are researching the enterprise space more often than not. And so I think some of those responses that we're seeing are more enterprise related than SMB related.
Right. Okay. So, what would be your field then of small businesses? Well, we call them SMEs here, or SMBs, like you call them. What do you feel the general approach to AI is then, in your experience?
So I think it's anything from, they're ostriches right now. They have their heads in the sand. They don't, they're either not willing to, or they don't recognize the degree of impact that this is absolutely having on their space. I still talk to numerous entrepreneurs of smaller enterprises who are, like, just they're all excited because they're just playing around a little bit with ChatGPT, or they're just maybe playing around with Gemini. And I'm like,
Sure.
okay, well, that's a good start. But you absolutely need to do a lot more. They also, obviously, there's more financial constraints when you're smaller. Now, the good news is there's a lot of really great tools out there that are not expensive. And if you're doing nothing, I mean, ChatGPT, $20 a month, like, there's no excuse why you shouldn't be in there, creating your own custom
So,
GPTs and just, getting
yeah,
it and using it. So, I mean, there are those financial constraints. And I think there's also the knowledge constraints, right? Because, if you're a large enterprise, you have an in-house IT department. So, you're either hiring the right skill sets, you're training the right skill sets to be able to assess different platforms, maybe build your own, customize your own, do all these things. Whereas if you're a small business, maybe you're working with an IT company, but they're also small and you're kind of reliant on their expertise, or, maybe you have the foresight to hire, consultants and teams who can come in and actually do this for you. But it's, there's aspects of it that are just not as easy because of resources and financial constraints. So I think that's what's standing in the way of SMBs making more progress on AI right now, more so than the same kind of barriers that I think that the Gartners of the world are researching and telling us about.
sure. Awesome. Thank you. So Zen Change has been quite public about testing AI for content, SEO, and even fractional CMO work. So here's mine is a two-parter question. I like to be greedy sometimes to get as most as I can out of you while I've got you. So here's the two-parter question. So where have you personally seen the biggest time saver wins? And then on the flip side, what was the one place you expected AI to shine, but it kind of fell flat?
Hmm. I would say wins definitely on content creation. So we've been able to, upwards of 3x the amount of content that we're able to create for clients within the same budget. So that's been definitely a win. I would say where it has not yet shown the benefits. I'm not. I'm not. I'm an overstatement. It hasn't shown the level of benefit that I'm looking for yet is more on the operations side. And I think part of that is just, we talk a lot in the AI space. A lot of people talk about the idea of human in the loop, right? So, I think when you're dealing with operations, a lot of what you're looking at is account management, project management. And yes, there's absolutely some enablement that we've been able to implement there, but it's still human to human, and humans still want to work with humans. So, you can't delegate everything to your AI receptionist and your AI chatbots. And people still do want to have that human connection. And so, I think we're going to see that for quite some time. And, for that reason, maybe the lift is a little bit less on the operation side.
Sure. And I suppose, and I didn't have this question, but listening to you sort of got me thinking. So, what do you feel that might mean for you when I mean, again, assuming you're looking to scale, because obviously different businesses have different sort of comfort zones where they want to stay. But assuming that you're looking to scale, I mean, I'm sure you'll tell me in a minute when I stop talking, but assuming you're looking to scale, what kind of challenge do you think that might present for yourself and Zen Change?
So yes, of course, I'm looking to scale. And I would say that it's really more about kind of nailing down the right balance. I think that we will continue to, be able to apply more AI to operations. I'm still seeing things in our business that we can still do, that we have, projects underway that we're working on. So I do think that it's more of a matter of time, because I think whenever you're dealing with operations, it's more people intensive, and therefore you have, I think, a stronger change management component. So it's not like I've noticed on the content side that, we introduce a new tool, the team gets all excited, they start playing with it. We have an AI tools task force, so we're always testing out new tools, and we're kind of testing one against the other, and we're dropping the old one. And so, my advice to entrepreneurs is, don't sign up for 1 year licenses for anything. Just take the month to months, because chances are you're going to have it for a couple months, and then something cooler is going to come out, or you're going to want to build your own.
Sure, sure.
But I think on the operations side, it's just more change management. I think people get more set in their ways in terms of processes, and they just need to think of different ways they can do things, not just, we want to automate what we have, but let's take a step back and say, is there a better way to tackle this process, given that we now have the potential of a tool? So I think it's a mindset shift more on the operations side.
Sure, awesome stuff. And I like that. And if anyone didn't pick that up, I think that's absolute gold in terms of having a AI tools task force. I mean, how it ATT, yeah, I think that's great, because we have a group of people constantly looking at and pitting AI tools against themselves to see what works best for the business. I think that's great, to be fair. So if anyone didn't pick that up, I think that's something really already what, 13 minutes in, and we're already getting value from Deanne already. So please take that on board. I think that's a super helpful nugget there. But anyway, onward with the questions. Right, let's me pick another one. Right, okay, so here's another one again, another stat-based one. IDC found that 40% of AI generated marketing content never gets published, usually because of approval log jams or brand voice mismatch, etc. So for your clients, for example, like attorneys or healthcare providers, what's the moment you know that an AI draft is client ready? And looking at SEO in 2025, is the game more AI powered volume, or kind of like fewer, higher quality pages that genuinely rank?
So a lot to unpack there. So let's start with when do you know your content is ready? Um, you as a marketer, it's your job to understand the client's brand. And so let's say you are, in the case, we don't just rely on ChatGPT, we have custom AI enabled workflows, but you need to, just like, and, so many people have used this statement that, with AI, it's like you're training a smart intern, right? So you can't just say, go write me a blog about acne. you know, I mean, you need to feed it the brand voice. You need to have all that documented. So you need to have your brand script created. And one trick that that we've done is we'll get a client talking about their brand. A lot of times they do that during onboarding. Grab the transcript of that conversation, feed that into an AI tool, and get it to extract from that the first pass of a brand script. And then each time we speak with a client, we're continuing, they're always dropping nuggets about, just different things about their brand and their advantages and something they heard from a prospect or a client. And so we're capturing that and we're adding that to the brand script. And so now we have this benchmark to compare any content against. And so when we're producing that content, we first of all, we're training the AI on the brand script. So the chances are it's going to come out with something that's a little bit, more on point. Um, but then we also have a smart human in the loop that deeply understands that client's brand script because it's their job, and so they have to QA. And so I think when we're looking at these statistics, we have to be conscious of the fact that a lot of times with AI, you have to iterate. You don't take what it gives you first. And you also, want to add something, now for flipping over to SEO, you need to add original content to whatever the AI produces so that it will be recognized as not only as a thought leadership piece, if that's what you're going for, but from Google's perspective, that Google's looking for, your expertise, your authority. And so you need to add something that is very custom, very specific for that client into the content. So I think what it's allowing you to do is create, if you're looking at blogs as a simple example, create longer content within the same amount of time, but you still have to have a talented writer who understands the brand, who is adding original content if you expect that to rank. Now, the other question that you were asking is about SEO, which is obviously there's a lot of conversations online these days about SEO and is it dead, and AI is killing SEO, and now it's search everywhere optimization, or it's answer engine optimization, and I mean everybody's trying to kind of come up with coin their own phrase, but I think what we've seen, and there's different research, but somewhere between 30 and 50% of searches now end in 0 clicks to any website, because most of those searches are happening on Google, and Google has Gemini that is driving the AI snippets that you see at the top of the page on, I think it's now about 80% of search queries. So if you just have an FAQ, a question about something, and you type that into, we'll say Google, in the old days, Google would return some websites that had answers to those FAQs, and you'd go and click on the website and go get your question answered. But we don't have to do that anymore, because now the AI, Gemini is going to give us that little snippet with the response. And now we have the opportunity to even click further into that and interact with it and ask it more questions, which means that for a good portion of our queries, we never have to go to anyone's website. Now, if you've structured your content to make the LLMs happy, then you may get referenced in the content. Doesn't necessarily mean that somebody's going to click on it. And in fact, a lot of websites are seeing a 30 to 40% drop in traffic now because of this. So what do you do? Right. So, I mean, there's a few things. So one is, when you are producing content, Google wants to see longer content. And it wants to see content that is ideally answering specific questions and structured like an LLM would want to see it. So in the old days, a lot of times people would kind of bury the answer to the question at the end of a very long article. Now we need to kind of write almost like you're writing for a newspaper, where it's like headline, answer right up front, and then add the supporting content below. It also, back to, it needs to be original, it needs to be thought provoking, because we're writing not just for the LLMs, we're writing for humans. And we're seeing indications that the Google algorithm is starting to favor more interaction with your content. So things like time on page and, depth of scroll, depth of search, within your website are becoming more important as ranking factors. So it's definitely not a volume game. I think when ChatGPT first came out, we started to see a lot of people were just pumping crazy volume into their websites because they can, but that's not enough. It has to be quality because Google is always going to adjust its algorithm for what it thinks humans want to see, right? And humans don't want to see crap. Humans see something that is thought
Put that
provoking
in the quote.
question, right? There you go. There's your little clip for the beginning of the podcast.
Yeah.
So you need to write good quality content. And even the same on your socials. There's tools out there where you can auto generate content and God forbid auto post content, but do you really want to put your brand at risk that way? What if it posts something crazy that you actually don't agree with that you never checked because now you're like, oh, I got all this time back in my life and now I don't have to check my social media content. But meanwhile, there's this impression being made of you out there that is very inconsistent with what you want to see for your brands. Long answer to a couple of questions.
No, absolutely. And I think that any soundbite we can take away from that, and I'm going to frame it in my table, Deanne Moura 2025, humans don't want to see crap. I like that. That's a soundbite to take away.
Be my next t-shirt.
Yeah. Right. Okay. Next one. So another stat again. SalesLoft recently reported that 60% of teams using AI for outreach still see drop-offs between lead engagement and sales handoff. So in your experience, where do leads most often break down? Is it the list quality, the first message, or the handoff to sales? And I like giving you two-parters. What role do you think AI should play or should not play in fixing that?
So I would say yes, yes, and yes, because it kind of depends on how you're executing. So if you're, and first of all, like if you're just cold emailing to a list, I mean, we have seen some drop off in that tactic in and of itself, because it's so easy now that so many people are doing it. And so again, back to humans don't want to see crap. If you're putting out, I mean, I've received, and I'm sure you have as well, some really crazy messages from people where clearly something went wrong. I've had like dear first name messages. I've had messages that where obviously they got the list wrong because they're trying to sell me marketing services, and I'm like, have you looked at my website to see what I do? So, I've had LinkedIn bots that hit me up with crazy generic messages. And, I think my pet peeve is when I agree to connect with someone and they immediately, their bot hits me with a sales message. It's like, please don't do that because that's not what a human would do. And if you're going to use AI, you need to kind of replicate human behavior. What would be natural human behavior? We would start a conversation first. We would get to know each other. We wouldn't just hit somebody up with, "Hey, buy my stuff." Right? So that's got to get my little pet peeve out of the way. But so obviously, if the list is wrong, there's kind of no excuse for that because it's so easy to get a really targeted list these days that you just and they're not crazy expensive. So I think that that's something that that obviously needs to be done. And then the messaging needs to be personalized because if it sounds like a bot, people know it's a bot, they're not going to answer. So and I think we need to be really careful about that. So I think definitely drop off if it's the wrong list, if we're using old tactics and, everybody's getting the same generic email that doesn't speak to their specific needs. And then, if you're doing outreach, it really depends on the business, right? I mean, how many people, and I don't know how many, I get tons of robocalls every day that I know is a robocall, and what they're pitching is something that is not anything that I would be remotely interested in. So, I mean, I think don't use technology just for technology's sake. Think it through and really understand your target persona, understand who is going to be on the receiving end of your pitch or your offer, and tailor it accordingly, and try to get the AI to emulate being human rather than, kind of back to our SEO discussion, rather than just pumping out volume because you can.
Yeah. Yeah. Sure. Awesome. Awesome. Um, and then again, in saying that, so do you flip between business generation and sort of running the business, or do you have a dedicated team that sort of does that for you and hands that over for your team to sort of run with? How does that work for you in Zen Change?
It depends on this on the sort of the size of the opportunity. So, in addition to being an agency owner, I'm a fractional CMO. So, being a fractional CMO is very much of a personal relationship type of conversation, because even though someone is basically hiring me part time, they are hiring me, and so that's not something where I think you can have generic outreach. So that's more about being in the right room. And when I say being in the right room, that means, networking in the right room and having the right conversations with the right level of people, who can refer and connect. And then when it comes to the agency business, then, that's more of a traditional marketing funnel. And, there's still a lot of, referrals. Obviously, our current clients refer, I'm in networking organizations where, we get referrals. And then the whether it's me handling it or whether it's my team handling it really depends on the size of the opportunity. So if it's like really large and complex and there's a lot of strategy involved, and there's potentially some fractional CMO work involved, then I do need to be personally involved in those
Involved. Sure.
conversations.
Sure, sure. Okay, cool. Um, right, let's pick another one. All right, here's one. So, Harvard Business Review notes that integration failures and data silos cost mid-market companies an average of 400K dollars per year in lost revenue opportunities. Now, looking at your own ops, where does data slow you down the most? Finding it, trusting it, or turning it into a decision?
I would say the data silos challenge is real, because again, if you have a number of different tools that you're using, then trying to make sure that the data is consistent, between those tools, just for consistent experience, I think is, that's still a challenge. And especially, if we're moving quickly and we're incorporating different AI tools, then it's making sure that everything is kind of on a solid database. So we have a central platform that we use, and ideally, although we will play around with some tools that don't sit within that platform, we try to get them to integrate, because then it's just easier. Then you're at least working off of the same database.
Sure, awesome. And in regulated niches, what guardrails do you set so that AI doesn't drift off brand or risk compliance?
Well, human in the loop, clearly.
Yeah,
So,
I was hoping
uh,
to, I was hoping if I could tease out something else for other than that, but
I
is that
know, I
genuinely the
know.
answer?
Well, and I mean, you have to, if you're in a regulated space, you have to understand what the guardrails are, and know that in some cases they're different in each state. So, with dealing in the legal space, for example, there's some consistency in the bar rules across the country, which you absolutely need to know, so that that has implications in terms of what you can say, particularly in advertising. But you do need to, definitely understand kind of what some of those guardrails are, what some of the limitations are, because that we have that law firm is entrusting their brand to us. They're entrusting their reputation with the bar to us. I mean, we can't take that lightly. And then, if you're on the healthcare side, obviously, HIPAA is a big deal, and I think some marketers may think, oh well, HIPAA. Well, I'm not really doing anything with patient data, so it doesn't apply to me. Well, if you associate just an email to a healthcare provider, that is what we call here PHI. So it's protected information that cannot be disclosed. And so even something as simple as an email list, that is regulated under HIPAA. And so my entire team is HIPAA trained, and we take that stuff very seriously because HIPAA violations are kind of a big deal for a brand, and they're expensive.
Can imagine. I can imagine. So, oh wow, almost running out of time. So I'm going to try and squeeze out two more questions from you, if I can. So first one. So PwC predicts that by 2026, nearly 40% of AI workflows in SaaS and marketing will be automated by low-code AI native platforms. So for yourself and Zen Change, what's the one hyped AI promise that you're still waiting to see actually work?
That's a good question. I would say, so there's a lot of promise around content creation. Um, in terms of being able to create content that requires less of a human in the loop, I'd say it's not quite there yet. And especially content that's going to perform. So in that case, I'm talking, blogs, written content, because you absolutely can't just crank out a blog on ChatGPT.
Yeah.
Even social content. I would also say that some tools. I'd say images are getting really good. They're still, I'd say, not quite as photorealistic as we'd like them to be in some cases. Video is really the next frontier. Like, I mean, Google, I think, is really, they have an awesome job with their product, but there's, you still need to understand a lot of, how to kind of set and direct each scene and how to structure the video. And so it's not like you can just type in a prompt and it's going to spit out a video that's exactly on point. So I think there's still some work that needs to be done there in order to get to the level where it can fully automate some of these things.
Sure. And this is not the second question, but kind of a follow up to what you just said. Um, so, what's the one shift that you think that will truly change how agencies and SaaS teams will operate over the next 2 years, in your opinion?
So I think a lot of marketing agencies have looked at just, if I send you traffic, I'm good. And I think what AI should allow an agency to do is to really build and enable the entire funnel for a client so that we have to be worried about conversion. It can't be just, I'm going to send it to sales and, oh well, it's sales fault because they didn't close the opportunities that I sent them, right? No. That's where I think AI can really enable, is like, how far down the funnel can we get you? And there's going to be some conversations that will still require a person to person, in most businesses. There's obviously exceptions. I think in the SaaS space, there's, you should be able to get someone to the point of converting in a lot of the tools unless it's enterprise. But I think just recognizing that we have the ability to automate and enable the entire marketing and sales process, and that's the value, is going deeper into the organization and actually helping them to convert.
Excellent, excellent stuff. And my final question, and I promise this is the last one. So, given where you want to be in the next 2 years, I mean, a couple of years ago would have said, what's your 10-year plan? What's your 5-year plan? But I'm sure you'll agree with me that everything is evolving so rapidly that it's crazy for anyone to even sort of think of a 10-year plan. So I'm saying 2 years to try and stretch it out as much as I can. So I guess what I'm saying is the next 2 years where you've planned for yourself and Zen Change to be, what would you say are kind of like the bottlenecks that you're dealing with at the moment that's kind of hamstringing that process, or maybe slowing it down more than you would have liked?
That's a good question. I don't know that it's any one bottleneck. I mean, obviously there's we're an SMB ourselves, so it's not like we have a massive enterprise of people to retrain, but there's still some retraining that definitely needs to happen, and has been happening with the team in order to embrace some of this, because I think AI is also driving teams to become more technical, or to partner with organizations who are deeply technical but maybe don't want to do all the kind of the human work or the content work. So I think it's forging the right relationships and partnerships in order to get to that next level, and to be able to then fully enable and fully automate a funnel for a client. I think that's really where and I'm not even going to say 2 years. I think that's more of maybe a 12-month plan.
Okay.
12 months. I mean, we're doing some of it now for clients. And I think it's, part of it is opening up, getting clients to understand that in order for them to compete, that there's more of their funnel that needs to be automated, that it doesn't all have to be people doing all of it. And then, being able to really execute, I think, the right integrations with their current systems to be able to enable that full funnel. And then, we're going to see definitely, I think agentic AI is obviously, really improving. We're to some extent, we're already there, but, we're not at the level true, in my mind, true agentic AI it's the AI is able to function independently and like a member of your team would, and to be able to have like an AI supervisor of other AIs that are executing on tasks. So I think really having that blended team of people and agents and how that can all flow seamlessly together, I think that's really going to be the next challenge.
Brilliant stuff. Thank you so much, Deanne. Um, Deanne, thank you again for joining us. For those listening, I'm sure you'll agree with me that we got loads from what she said today. And I had the suspicion, and I said to her when we spoke, but I didn't give her the questions. We just spoke to sort of have that human interaction. I had a sneaky suspicion that I wouldn't be able to get at everything that I would want to within the 40-minute kind of constraint. So I'm sure we'll be bringing her back again just to try and delve a bit more into her mind and eke out some more golden nuggets. And again, remember, she said it here first: humans don't want to see crap. So please, guys, make sure you take that and wear it, or put it on a t-shirt, and make sure you effect that. But then again, Deanne, thank you so much for joining us. And if you want to learn more about ZenChange, you can visit them at zenchange.com. Check out her Entrepreneur with Deanne Moura podcast for even more candid founder insight. So that's really it for this episode of Advantage Point. And if you found today's conversation useful, share it with your team, subscribe for more deep dives, and we'll keep seeing how AI takes us in 2025 and beyond. So again, till next time, thanks for tuning in, and be well.